You're listening to Highest Level with Michael Bailey and Anthony Dawson, a podcast dedicated to unlocking peak performance, powerful mindset shifts, and the real conversations behind success. Get ready to think bigger, grow faster, and aim higher. This is Highest Level.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Highest Level podcast with me, Michael Bailey. I'm a property specialist and estate agent over in Preston, the Fylde Coast and South Ribble as well.
Hello, my name's Anthony Dawson. I'm a real estate agent in the Pendle and Burnley area of the northwest of England. And with us today on our podcast, Highest Level, is Dylan Carter. I nearly feel like there should be a drum roll here. Dylan joins us as a, shall I say, retired world champion kickboxer. Is that a fair?
Yes, yeah, I'll take that. It's accurate enough for me.
Brilliant. And then from that, you've then latterly moved into the fire service. Is that?
Yes, yeah, 22 years, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. All 22 years at the same station with extra qualifications and extra areas that we specialise in as well.
Fantastic. So, I mean, I just don't know where to begin on this topic because I think martial arts is a topic that probably resonates quite well with many males out there, females as well. But I mean, you must have some absolutely phenomenal tales and journeys and chapters and learning points and reflections on things that may have not been optimum, shall we say, in a fight, but then also the resilience and wanting to overcome and literally fight back. So I think it's a really impressive accolade, and maybe I lose sight of it because we're both from the same hometown, born and bred in Burnley. In fact, our mums went to school together, and maybe we lose sight of it or we're humble about it. But, you know, Burnley, market town, north of England, not one of the most affluent places in the country. And yet there are actually quite a few, I think we were discussing before, maybe 5 or so serious contenders or people with serious accolades in the martial arts arena. So that's telling me that, I don't know, is this a forged in fire thing? Is there something in the water? I don't know. But certainly some of your peers, but in shall we say, competing martial arts, all coming from little old Burnley.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the day when I was doing my training, when I was sort of the top of my game, there was myself and another fighter that fought for the same club as me, the Black Knights Kickboxing Club in Burnley. It started out as a jiu-jitsu club, really, doing semi-contact, light contact type stuff. And then our instructor, Alan Clarkin, an absolute legend in the Burnley area and beyond, martial artist throughout his whole life, one of the best coaches and managers you'll ever come across. He's produced a number of champions, all at different levels, ranging right through from local area, regional area, northern, northwest, right through to international champions in all kinds of disciplines as well, you know, ranging from kickboxing, sambo, rolling around doing the wrestling type, MMA, cage fighting type things. Possibly the biggest name that came from Black Knights Kickboxing Club was Michael Bisping, known as the Count, who went on to win UFC world title accolade, lives in LA, worth a fortune, you know, and he stemmed from originally Clitheroe, but trained in Burnley. Mick and Rob Sinclair, the Sinclair brothers, again, well known in the cage fighting areas, alongside another good friend of ours, Daniel Howard Dodge, who won himself more than one title fight. He had a semi-pro title win in Carlisle and another title win in, I think he was in Manchester at the Ritz, where he won a lightweight title fight. So yeah, I think there's a mentality or a mindset, as we say, from Burnley of it can be a tough place to grow up. Maybe that's what's developed this, but I think it's also a little more than that. I think it's in the people as well as in the area, if that makes sense.
So, I mean, it's interesting because I think this kind of loops back to one of our previous episodes of, you know, who's in your 5, you know, have the power 5 and those people that have the most significant influence over you. It sounds like Alan was one of your 5, you know, tried and tested, died in the mold of the wall, whatever the phrase is, you know, just really detailed knowledge, got the accolades, and I suppose put you in the best possible chance to come from a really good stable and achieve the accolades that you've got. And if anything, it's making me feel like a bit of a failure. I'm from Burnley and I'm not a fighter, so I need to work on that. Michael, there we go, white collar boxing, let's go.
I'd be really interested to know though, how much of that do you think is down to obviously the undoubted need to have high fitness and all of this kind of stuff versus mindset? What do you think the breakdown was? And tell us a little bit about that.
It's a funny one. I think I've always said when it comes to actually competing, stepping up into that ring, stepping into that cage, stepping up to whatever arena it may be, if you haven't got the mental game and got that down, then it's only ever going to be a massive uphill struggle. I think anybody who doesn't have the mental attitude in the right frame before starting a fight is going to struggle no matter what their physical talents. It's too easy to give up if you've not prepared yourself mentally. So I'd put mental state and sort of mindset easily 40% of the game, maybe even more. Obviously, as you say, your fitness levels, your techniques, your skills and abilities play a massive part. But if there's you in that ring, in that fighting arena, with those skills up against somebody else with those exact skills, the only winner is going to be the one that's got it all in there, prepared better mentally as well as physically.
Wow, when you put it like that, that's a really brilliantly put way of describing that. It's interesting you say that as well, because I was listening to very, very different segue, by the way, where I'm going here. But I was listening to a podcast with Ed Sheeran yesterday, and he was saying kind of something similar. There's 3 components you need to be a success in the music industry. Work ethic, you need to be talented, but you also need to be able to work really hard and get on with people. And he said he's seen countless people who are super talented, but because the other 2 parts called components weren't there, they've never done anything, or people that have got a very small amount of talent, but the other 2 components are really, really super high. So it's really interesting you put it like that, because clearly, that mindset element, when you've both got the same level of fitness, the same amount of training, that's the only thing that's going to split you.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it's interesting, to keep it on the topic, I suppose, was it Muhammad Ali said, when I was training, I hated absolutely every second of the training. But I knew if I got this bit right, I could live the rest of my life as a world champion. And I think that ties in very nicely with what you're saying. And I think it is interesting, and it does make sense that you're saying maybe mindset is 40% of the whole thing. And I liken that to, success means you need to have a toolbox with very effective and well looked after tools. But it sounds like the mindset tool has to be, it's a big tool. It's a big part of the selection. And I think something I heard recently was someone was referring to the concept of plan B is like we were saying before, plan B is the enemy of plan A. If you've got half an eye on what your get out backup plan might be, you've kind of, it's using up maybe a little bit of your cognitive bandwidth. It's distracting you from going for your primary objective. And I think you were saying before about what was the name of the chap, how he used to approach every fight.
Yes, Michael Bisping. He's myself and him training in the same club, roughly the same weights. We sparred together a lot. We trained together a lot. I was always going into all my fights with my own mental attitude, which was, use your skills, use your techniques, hit and don't be hit, that kind of a thing, which worked for me and ultimately got me the goal I always aimed for. Mick, on the other hand, seemed to have the mindset of, if you're stood in front of me in that ring, be prepared to be absolutely annihilated, because that is my one and only goal. And for Mick, that worked exactly the same. It took him right to the top level of what he wanted to do. So relating back to your toolbox, fully agree. Have the tools, have the knowledge and skill to use them, but also pick the right tool for the job, because you might have a great tool and a great way of using it, but if you use that skill and that tool against the wrong person and the wrong type of fight, if that's the scene it's in, that can all unfold in front of you. A left hook not necessarily work on one guy, whereas on the next guy, it puts him out.
I thought of, when you said about Muhammad Ali, I thought about a Tyson quote actually as well, which is, I've just searched it because I can remember it exactly. Discipline is doing what you hate to do, but doing it like you love it. as in with the training, like you've just got to, in fact, it's applicable that to anything really, isn't it? It's that consistency of the day-to-day stuff, just doing it day in, day out, even when you don't really want to.
Yeah, consistent discipline can really take you places. Yeah. But it's interesting as well because, you have the ebb and flow of your career and your life. And, it's easy for me to talk about, throw the kitchen sink at it, plan B, enemy of plan A. I mean, there'll be elements of your fighting career that you can transfer into your fire service career, which is presumably making you, one of the best in class there. But there will also be, I suspect, elements that you've had to adapt and change and consider how to maybe use some of those things, because you can't just go at it as in, I need to get the casualty at any cost, as per the fighting mentality. There's no other factors in play, family man, career, your own life, and things like that. So I suppose, there's a time and a place for a plan B, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of find I'm sometimes, and my wife will not want to hear this at all, I'm probably still a little bit too far the way I was with my fighting career as I am in my sort of like firefighting career. I'm still a little bit, I'm here to do a job, and the risk to me is there, and I'm willing to take that risk in order to get the job done, save the casualty, help the casualty the best I can, even if that comes ultimately at a massive cost to me. I try not to think too much about the cost to my family, to my wife, to my children, whilst in the situation, almost because of plan B, plan A.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking too much about that,
taking your mind off
doing this job enough.
Yeah.
And it's very much a balancing act and a juggling game, really.
I think as well that probably loops back to what Michael was saying then about it's the whole nature-nurture argument. How much of that winning mindset is actually in your DNA, and how much is it having been? I'm going to make it sound like a movie now. Having forged on the mean streets of Burnley as a youth in the 80s, or maybe even 70s. Actually,
Absolutely,
you're 6 months older than me. Well, we'll say that, and then it'll err in your favour.
Yes, many moons ago when Burnley was all black and white. But yeah, I mean, there was, as everybody feels, there was that little element of bullying at school. I was the smallest in my year group and this sort of thing. So that maybe was what first started me along the road of need to be tougher, need to be bigger, need to do things. My coach at school dropped me from the football team because I wasn't big enough to stand up for myself. So that's what got me into martial arts in the first place. And then martial arts just took over. I think there is some of that childhood, rough, tough areas at times and things like that comes into everything as your life goes on.
Something I'm curious about. Do you ever get the desire just to nip back in the ring and see if you've still got it?
All the time. All the time. My nephew he's doing really, really well at the moment. Now my nephew is...
He'll want your title. He wants you in the...
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And Kingsley Carter, watch this name. He's gone in there. He's fought boxing, Thai boxing, bare knuckle fighting. He'll have a go at anything, but he's actually quite skilled and he's honing those skills better and better. He just fought 2 nights ago on a big show up against the most active unlicensed fighter in the country and won. So he's pushing, and he's going to get up there again, coming from the little mill town of Burnley. And yeah, it just seems to be we've got this production line almost.
Yeah, fighting spirit, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
So if we were to, or you reflect back on your career, what do you think might have been some of the things that you either a learning point or something that you struggled to grasp, but when the penny dropped, you kind of became a real powerful force? You talked there briefly about having maybe been the victim of bullying at school, but then I'm guessing hormones kick in, you start getting bigger, and you can fight back more effectively. But again, it goes back to mindset being a big thing. What do you think some of your key learning points are that you could share with people?
One of the biggest things, I guess, would be just having that belief in yourself, that faith. And it's difficult to find that when you are feeling like the victim. You've kind of almost got to put that out of your mind and be, no, right, okay, I'm my own person and I've got to do whatever I've got to do if I'm ever going to get out of this sort of like rut I feel like I'm in.
So be wary of a victim mentality and have absolute faith in your ability, not overconfidence, but know what your ability level is. And then I suppose by extension, you can, if you've got a good read on your own attributes, strengths and weaknesses, you can go, hey, well, I can really, like Jimmy Carr says, don't go from study an E subject to become a C subject. Identify your strengths and lean into it. Go from being a B in the subject to an A. But also, I suppose, be mindful of those things that you might be an E in, and either, I suppose, to relate it to business world, you could leverage it out, or be mindful of it, because we do need to get to a minimum grade on certain things. Like, for example, I presume if you were to transfer over into MMA, your groundwork might become a big issue because you spent so much time cultivating, I don't know, the running around bit. You can tell I'm not
absolutely. Yeah, the stand-up game.
That stand-up game. There we go.
For me, was natural. The rolling around, for me, it wasn't natural. It didn't come as easily. And yeah, you're absolutely right with that. There's different aspects that you have to work on, whereas you've got to appreciate your strengths and make that work for you. And I do agree, that goes through everything, work life, home life, everything really, your sports and the works. And one thing I always thought as well is sort of like have an ultimate goal in mind. Have your little sort of smart goals, the smaller, more specifics to get you on the ladder and on the way. But all the way through, you've just got to appreciate that things can change, things can alter. It might take longer than you planned. It might not quite go the way you planned, but you never lose sight of that ultimate plan, which is to get your goal.
Yeah.
Now, in the fighting career, I did that. And because of the other little obstacles along the way, once I'd achieved that goal, I had a big decision to make. Do I keep going with this, and do I aim to go different associations, unify titles, fight in different weight categories, or do I not? And my decision then, based on everything else prior, was I've achieved my goal. I'll come out on top rather than push and push and push and lose the love I had for the game, because I'd started to get a little bit disillusioned, disheartened, not enough money in the game, this kind of thing. And I realized practically life had to go on. So then I had to look for a real job and ended up being a firefighter.
But there's also as well health risks, knowing when to I suppose there's an element of self-preservation, but knowing that, I'm at the top now, unfortunately, every year we all get a year older, and acknowledging that, because how many people, sports people, have we seen, either be forced or desire to just one more, and it can go quite badly for them. Interesting.
Do you think then that's, because I won't say anyone particularly, but I'm looking at specific fighters at the minute I'm thinking about who really probably should have gone out at the top, but they don't, and they come back and they then try and keep going. But it obviously takes a really particular type of mindset to let go at the top and say, do you know what, I've done this, I'm out.
Yeah, I see that, but I also see that, as you mentioned, some fighters. One you mentioned earlier, Mike Tyson. I absolutely adored that guy, and if you could ask me, best boxer of all time. Okay, I wasn't around to see Muhammad Ali, but Mike Tyson is there. He was there the whole time. And I felt sadness when he came back to fight the YouTube hero, because to me, I just lost that little bit of respect for the man he was when he was at the top of his game. And I know there were lots of other issues with him, but as far as the boxing went, he was always 100%, all his heart, everything went into it. And then maybe a little bit, one step too far, too late in the day, that sort of thing, and he's gone back, and he's lost a lot for me in that sense. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, I can tell my kids when they're getting older, I was a world champion kickboxer, undefeated, and yeah, okay, I never defended the title, so that made it easier.
It's a mic drop, it's fine.
But it's undefeated, and that was in my mindset. And it was, right, okay, this is not going to pay the bills. This is not going to be a lifetime achievable career. But I've done what I had to do, and that was my thing. And as you mentioned about health concerns, things like that, another ex-fighter, another absolutely amazing fighter, and a career fighter in lots of different ways. Gary Turner went to New Zealand with him when we fought in the World Championships. He fought so many fighters and everything else, but he's a very learned, sort of educated man as well, since his fight career, more so, and he's doing PhDs in traumatic brain injury, talking about the risks and the dangers and the way it is in the fight game today. So there are a lot of concerns. Could say the same in the firefighting, but I've still got that little bit of, that's what I'm here to do. So
I think you're right there, because when I look at footballers and they're a 50-50 tackle, and my dad was a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade, and he did 30 years, and he would always say the same, really, that you can only go in committed and thinking of the right outcome, because otherwise the fear and everything else takes over you. And about the football analogy, they say when there's a 50-50 tackle, if you don't go in fully, both sides of that equation, then someone's going to get injured. You have to be committed. So I think that's a really, really interesting one as well. Obviously, it's not to win a world title, you don't just turn up and win the world title. So talk to us a bit more about that journey and perhaps some of the setbacks that you had and how you use your mindset to get through that.
So career initially started doing jiu-jitsu as a 13, 14-year-old. I developed into some semi-contact competitions doing that, where, it was just touch contact to the head, a little bit stronger to the body, but nothing too heavy. I was quite successful in a lot of those fights. I won some British titles, but I always remember coming up against one fighter, Chris Collymore, and he was part of the squad for the England team that we were going away to New Zealand with, and I came up against him. Now, he was shorter than me, he was lighter than me and everything else, and he was just a lovely guy. I was chatting with him as best friends before the fight, and then the referee said fight, and within 10 seconds, it hit me about 17 times. I was still in that relaxed attitude. He's a friend, and he beat me, and that set me back quite a way, because up until that point, I'd not been beaten, and I was devastated.
I like this though, because this is the taste of defeat. You never forget it, but bloody hell, it can really spur you on. Absolutely. And I think it reminded me of, is it Daley Thompson? And it's like, when you're getting ready to go, he says, "Well, I go on." Was it the beer, the bang? Is that the phrase? Okay. Well, which is like you were saying, that guy, he was waiting for the first syllable, and then he was on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, interestingly, that is what it reminds me of. I watched a documentary with Usain Bolt. And I think he was talking about the World Championship, and I can't remember the other American runner, but they never spoke before normally. They'd never spoken when they're in the warm-up area. They never spoke. And Bolt looked over and for the first time ever spoke to this guy, and the response he got was one at which he was like, "Oh no, I've got him today." And then from there, that's where he went on to win double Olympic gold, all this kind of stuff. So it's interesting, that little interaction, what can come from that, both as a negative and as a positive, actually.
I never watched a fight when I was on the kickboxing scene, the full contact stuff. Never watched the fights before mine. It was always, I was away in my corner in my changing room, focusing 100%. It's my fight and my fight alone. Friends from my camp were fighting before me. That was their fight. I wasn't interested. Same thing goes, and that, like I say, came from my early doors defeat, both to Chris, and then there was another fight. Colin Treasure beat me in a semi-contact, and with Colin, I got my chance. He went into full contact around the same time as me, and he ended up being the guy I fought in my third professional full contact fight. So I had the history of having been beaten by him, and as you say about spurring you on, he didn't come out for round 5. He stayed on his stool. So I put that down to, you're not beating me a second time. No chance.
In terms of preparation for the fight, did you ever, I'm not going to give the game away on your exact age, but was there ever any footage that you could have studied if you wanted to, or did you do that I hear stories about, like with the American football, and there'll be people will really, maybe the coaches, they'll really pore over the game footage to try and work out the weaknesses and nuances and taking it to that heightened level. I mean, for me, there's, if you get there's the physical bit and there's the mental bit, and if you can just absolutely throw the kitchen sink at both of those. And I think one of those components could well be going as granular as, right, let's study. Oh, you know what? He just holds his left elbow 2 inches down on that side, which means he's going to be more susceptible to a right hook after. And you know what I mean? I mean, did you go into that level?
I personally didn't. I fully agree that is more of what's done today, and I don't see any issues with that. For me personally, I didn't. There wasn't quite as much ability to watch previous fights and things. You know, it was on VHS and the screen was going all over the place and so grainy and everything else. For me, it was more, my coach could do some of that if he had history and he had things he could look at, and he'd come to me and tell me, right, yeah, lifts his chin quite high, susceptible to a left hook, whatever. And I'd have that in mind.
Yeah.
But I didn't do too much studying, because for me personally, if I was studying them too much, I'm going into the actual fight thinking about, if he does this, I'll do that. If he does that, whereas my fight game was much more naturally dynamic, reactive.
Yeah.
I see a shot, I go for it. I see a gap, I'll aim for that. If I see him coming, I'm getting out of the way and I'm dodging and ducking. It was all very much on the spot.
Essentially, what you're saying is you leveraged it out and you were presented with an executive summary. I like that.
Again, though, they say in football now, though, sometimes teams set up, they do analysis. They've got analysis paralysis, whatever the term is, where they study the other team so much they forget about their own strengths, and they set up to nullify the other team instead of playing to their strengths, which I agree is can sometimes be yes, it's too much the other way. I'm all for being prepared, but
again, going back to the toolbox, using the wrong tool in the job, because I was thinking about that's what he doesn't like, but not thinking that's what I can use best, you know.
Yeah.
I can remember a tale of, there was two cyclists. I can't remember the name. It might have been involving Lance Armstrong. I'm not sure, but there were two guys, and they were Palais world competition level, and so they not hated each other out on the track, but on the race course, they were out to beat each other for sure, and absolutely tip of the spear level. And I heard this interview, and one guy was saying, so I phoned him up on Christmas Day, and I left him a voicemail. I was out with my family, being Christmas Day, family time, blah, blah, blah. And then the following day, he called me back, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't pick up because I was out training." And that was the point. He knew the guy was operating at a different level. But what's really interesting about that is that he might have made that a self-fulfilling prophecy, because he inadvertently maybe broke his own mindset by saying, "Oof, I wasn't out yesterday." Either as minute as saying, he's had a day extra training now of me, or he didn't interrupt it for that. So it's interesting. The guy put a plus on the board, and the other guy might have put a minus in his own mind. Just kicked his own legs out from under him. I love tales like that, where people, they go all in. And then what I find fascinating is what we describe as all in, and then you speak to somebody else and what they define as all in, and you go, "Oh my God, this is different again." And I've done some amateur triathlons and things like that, and you see, you're chatting to the killer elites at the front of the pack afterwards, and you just kind of like, "Oh my God, you're not 6 inches ahead of me. You're in a different universe." And I'm going to go sell my bike now.
Like you say, again, with the sort of mind games and everything else, the guy that's responded the day after and said, "Sorry, no, I was out training," may well have just been absolutely hungover in bits or out on the beer himself.
Oh, say that. You do well. I love that story.
But then turns
no, but you're right.
And throws that in the mix of, "No, I was training," just to put the other guy off keel.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really interesting point, because what you're talking about there is the mental battlefield before you've even got into the physical fight. And again, that goes back to, I think, what Michael was saying about the guys, in the gym, and I liken it to kind of two lions or sharks circling. They kind of like, there's a mutual respect, but also there's actually, let's leave the mind stuff out of this. I want this to be absolutely nearly raw, prehistoric, dinosaur versus dinosaur, and just a true test on the physical level. But as we all know, the two are interlinked. You can't separate separate them out. But it is interesting. And there are some, in fact, it's interesting actually, because this goes back to Dodge, and Daniel, he's considering doing some retraining based on presumably his MMA exposure, trying to work with on the psychology of people that are really at that competitive level. So he's going to be leaning on that. He's going to be leaning on his other qualifications to really deliver on that level. And I think it is interesting, because it's probably only something that's emerged over the last 10 years or so about mindset, winning mindset. It's more of a recognized thing rather than you've either got it or you haven't, because I think to an extent, there's a raw material there, but you can polish these things. You can, what does it say? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work, or something like that. It is an interesting topic.
It's interesting then as well, because you described this kind of, yes, obviously there's mutual respect with the opponent and all this kind of stuff, but you just get in your own bunker. You focus on what you can control. You do you, and you don't try and orientate too much around other people, which obviously is a lesson to go through lots of different sports. Lots of basketball guys, well, LeBron James, or it might have been, I can't remember the guy. What was the other guy's name? This chap that sadly passed away on the helicopter flight.
Kobe Bryant.
Yeah. Kobe, yeah. They're both of a similar mindset. Is I'm not going to measure what you're doing. I just know I'm going to do 1% more, and kind of focus on themselves, which is interesting.
Always double down on yourself.
Yeah. Control what you can control. So what kind of practices or habits do you have, like, in your day-to-day life of maintaining good mindset or creating a growth orientated mindset?
Again, it's more, it seems to come natural rather than a conscious decision to do this on a day-to-day. But I think reflection's huge. I think, at the end of the day, just looking back at your day and just having a think, right, what could I have done better there? I've got 3 daughters, so quite often when they've gone to bed and I think about the part where I lost my temper or screamed at them or, said, if you don't do this, you won't get that. And you look back at the end of the day and think, right, that's what happened. That's what I did at the time, but could I have done it better? And then potentially, the following day or a week later, whatever it may be, just try doing that different thing and seeing if it has a better result. We all know that if you keep doing the same thing in the same situation, you're going to get the same result. So change things up. That's probably my biggest one. Always aim, that's the end of the day. Start of the day, start off on a good footing. Do something positive first thing, and then try and continue that through my day, sort of thing.
Make your bed. Get the first win on the board.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was that Marine, wasn't it? Yeah, the Marine guy, Marine general or whatever said, yeah, make your bed is the first win of the day.
Yeah.
Get that positive momentum going. But it's interesting. I struggled with that at school. Why on earth are we learning about history? But, as I got older, I worked it out, because you can learn so much. And again, there's another phrase, a wise man learns from his mistakes, but a wiser man learns from other people's. And I think that's the beauty and the pain maybe of a hive mind, because, that shared turmoil, the failures, the learning points, and then how you can adapt, incorporate and keep yourself in the fast lane of personal development, physical development, business development, whatever your key focus is at that point.
Yeah, I think you're right there. So something that's clearly come through as part of your mindset is adaptability, because you mentioned quite a few sort of different types of parts of it where you've adapted to here, or like you just said with your daughters, you might try this way and it doesn't work out, so you reflect and adapt. So yeah, I take it then adaptability is really important to you. Is that something do you think that's come naturally, or is that more deliberate?
I think it's a natural thing. I would say the adaptability, is a big thing with me in all areas. The probably the best example would be in the fire service with that one. I just think that there are situations and scenarios that we can turn out to whereby sometimes you've just got to almost be ruthless and emotion free, because the emotion side can take over and make things much harder. So you may have a casualty who's really suffering, but you've just got to focus on, right, they need this doing. These are the injuries. These are the treatments we've got available. It may hurt, but it's going to be better in the long run. So we've got to get it done. without spending too much time on that. Oh, don't worry, you're going to be okay. We're looking after you. There is an element of that. In another situation, you've got somebody else who's witnessed this, who's very upset, very emotionally shocked. They need that compassion. They need that little bit of empathy. And that's what they need at the time to make them okay. So you've got to be able to adapt from one situation to another, and also within one situation from one person to another, dependent on what your end goal is.
I think you could do a critical analysis on that and say that there's a time and a place for the objective mindset, so focusing on, right, casualty, at risk, solution focused, and being objective and not letting subjectivity creep in. So subjectivity is the enemy in that context, whereas then you've got the alternative application of, we've got a witness, a victim, or something like that. Subjectivity is absolutely crucial. The objective approach of, there's nothing wrong with you. I can't see an issue here. Please go away. That's a total oversimplification, but it's interesting how time and a place, again, goes back to tools in the toolbox, doesn't it? Time and place. There's a perfect tool for every job.
I could just throw another example of that in there. This one, personal life. My daughter, my youngest, I've got 3 daughters, as I mentioned, a 10-year-old and twins at 7. At 6 weeks old, one of the twins stopped breathing on me, and I had to do CPR for 20 minutes. Now, in that scenario, I had to be the emotionless, ruthless, job needs doing, solution, casualty needs this and all. And it's my own daughter. But if I had been the emotional side, I probably would have broke down and not been able to do anything properly. So it became this ruthless, emotionless. And I had family members at home who witnessed this, and they said afterwards, how did you do that, knowing it's your own daughter and everything else? And it was like, well, I had to. On the flip side of that, when I was dealing with my wife, once she'd come to the hospital, because she wasn't there, thankfully, to witness it, it had to be all about the compassion. If I'd have been ruthless with her then, it just would have been a disaster. So it was all about the compassion. And then, obviously, coming away from all that, I had to have the compassion for myself, and also a little bit of a ruthless, as in, right, yeah, but it's done with, you got to move on. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to continue doing the job I do. So
I think you've just given me a learning point there, which is always nice to have a light bulb moment. What we're saying is, so what you're saying is, they're actually both sides of the same coin. I always try to be objective, eyes on the prize, solution focused, but I don't know, the ratios will differ and the applications, but you cannot have one without the other. And I dare say, if you've got one without the other, then you're going to hamper your own success again, whatever it is that you're pursuing success in. That's quite powerful.
Going back to the 40% mentality mindset, 60% physical talent and skills and abilities and training, whichever ratio we put together, depending on each scenario, as long as it all adds up to 100, that's what we're aiming for, isn't it? And we cater the ratio to the scenario.
I suspect if you're weak on the self-belief and the mindset bit, if you're super duper well disciplined, you can probably just lean on maybe autopilot, and in fact that's an interesting segue, I suppose. Talk us through your training regime, because I don't believe people are born world champions. I believe there's a lot of people born with the ability to become one, but it's down to the individuals to not just knock it over the line, that's understating it, but pick it up and run with it and do the hard yards. So I don't know, when would you say you start? At what age did you start your career, your fighting career, and how many hours? How much did it take over your day? Because for me, there's 3 elements. There's the physical training, there's getting your diet right, and getting your mindset right, and part of the mindset, I suppose, is happy home life and keeping everything in the right boxes. So what would a day in the life have been when you were really full tilt?
So I'd say beginning when I was 13, 14, I went down to the old mill, to Alan's gym, and I started my training then. And because it was all with a goal to get bigger, get stronger for football, I worked hard. and I was down there probably 4, maybe 5 times a week. As that developed and I went into the competing on a national level and then ultimately international level, I was training 6 days a week, twice a day, most days. The job that I went into, working at the sports centre in Burnley, was on a casual hours basis, purely so that I could work it around my training. And I worked literally every hour I had was focused on training and achieving that ultimate goal of the world title. At home, all I was thinking about was, right, okay, eating better, getting fitter. At times when I couldn't sleep because things were on my mind, I'd be up at 1:30 in the morning and go out for a run. I remember getting pulled over by the police one time. I was
Steady, this is being recorded.
Black sweatsuit on, black bobble hat, running around the streets of Burnley at 1:30, 2 in the morning. Police car comes past and flags me over, pulls over, asking me what I'm playing at, what am I doing?
They're probably doing a welfare check on you.
Yeah, I think they were thinking I'd been cat burglar.
Yeah.
But again, I just explained, no, I'm out for a run, I can't sleep. And they quizzed me quite deeply about it, but then let me off on my way, probably followed me as well, just to be sure. But yeah, that was it. It was all I was thinking about at the time, was trying to up that level. As time went on, obviously, you leave school, you're looking at having to get a job, you've got family life going on and all that sort of thing. It had to take its place. But even to the point where friends of mine, weekends, they were out drinking cider on the corner of the streets and all that sort of thing. And I was at the gym training. So it took out of my social life and everything. But it was because that was my choice, my plan A, if you will.
I think that's the take with a lot of these things. There's always consequences of our actions, and sometimes, again, I relate it back to business. Sometimes you have to forgo something today for a brighter tomorrow. Sometimes that is, and I'll give some coaching on this to people. Sometimes you got to do the saving today so you can invest today or tomorrow, so that retirement early or investment or whatever the thing is. And I think you made that. It's interesting, again, going back to the objective, subjective. You made the objective realization, no, I'm going to forgo treats today because, I don't think there's any harm in saying this. You'll get the subjective glow for the rest of your life, knowing that you've got the highest accolade in that area. And I think that is really commendable, because it's easy to do the alternative. It's easy to just say, sack it, I'll skip this one. I'll go for a couple of ciders or cheeky Vimtos.
And the treats can come later. The treats can come after. I used to write a list. As soon as I got a craving for something, pie, chips and peas, but I knew I wasn't going to have that because I had a fight coming up. I wrote it on my list, pie, chips and peas. And then literally the day after the fight, I knocked off as much as I could from that list.
Oh, wow. I like that.
That is unreal, yeah.
I like that. That's yeah.
But the thing was, having had all the treats the day after, I felt absolutely awful. So it made it easier to forgo those in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the stuff I ate on a day after a fight and drank and everything, it's just all those treats in one suddenly weren't a treat anymore.
It's interesting that, because the motivation to get you the success became the motivation to continue the success, because you didn't want to do it, not the day after, the day after the day after. It's kind of like, oh my God, I need to get back into training mode. I feel awful. But so if, again, just putting it under the microscope. So day in the life, are we saying, it's kind of like you're getting up, maybe doing 4 hours of physical honing and then a break, and then in the afternoon 4 hours of technique honing? I know sometimes fighters, they'll separate the two out like that, won't they?
Yeah. I used to go down to the old mill in the mornings, and because most people then were either doing their work life or school life or whatever else, I'd be going down there and I'd be doing solo work, skipping, hitting the bags, shadow boxing, all that sort of thing. In the evenings when I'd go down there and there were more people there, that's when we'd get the sparring and, the circuit training, 1-against-1, relays, that sort of thing as well. So it was always, in every session was a combination of mental and physical, because Alan had always also take time out to discuss things, to talk theory, to talk technique, to talk mindset really, without boxing it in as that. That was what we did. And that was, morning for 2 to 3 hours minimum, evening for 2 to 3 hours minimum. And then the afternoon sort of spell in between was when I'd go and do my shifts at the sports centre or whatever it be. Whilst at school, it was literally, obviously, school hours and then straight home, straight to the gym, every opportunity.
Obviously, you've mentioned 13, 14. Obviously, you were like in good physical fitness from playing football and everything like that. But that 13, 14 starting out in this kind of part of sport and fitness and competing, is that quite unusual?
No. I mean, the martial arts, you've got people training from 4, 5, and 6 years old upwards, to be honest with you. To do it with the amount of hours I was putting in, yeah, probably unusual. The majority were coming once a week, twice a week. I was hitting it every possible opportunity. So I'd say that side of it was maybe a little unusual. But to have people training in the martial arts from a young age is not unusual at all.
You could argue you were not necessarily playing catch-up, but I liken it to, I used to play lacrosse and I came to it as a 19-year-old. And whenever I was coming up against the Americans that had been playing since they were 4 years old, I was nowhere near them on technique, but I could use a rugby mentality to, well, if they're on their back, I can just pick the ball up and run with it. And I think, well, from what you're saying there, you let it absolutely take over your life to a point where if you were to, and I think there's a statistic about this, isn't it? You know, if you do something for 1 3/4 hours of a day for, is it 10 years, you become a master. And you did the hard yards, you just did it over a truncated or a shortened time scale to match up with the other masters, and then became the master. In fact, that's a good point. Have you ever thought about doing some coaching to impart?
It was a big question when I did stop the actual competing. A lot of people asked me that question: are you going to go into training? Are you going to go into coaching? Everything else. A few things stopped that from happening, really, and one of them being me knowing myself. If I'm into something,
The temptation,
I'm kind of all or nothing, and I would have to be all in. And then the temptation, as you say, to get back in the ring, to get back up there and compete for myself. I knew that I couldn't dedicate that amount of time and training whilst also holding down a full-time job. And that was my biggest thing, was I knew I had to get into the full-time work. I got the firefighting career, which allows you a lot of time, but I knew that if I was going training, coaching or whatever, I'd be wanting to put in 6 days a week, twice a day, kind of stuff, and I couldn't. And if I couldn't do it for myself, I also didn't want to be only half giving to anyone that I'm trying to coach. So yeah, the coaching side, as much as I think I would have loved it, it just, again, I wasn't going to be able to give it my all, so I don't think it would have been fair.
You'd have ended up with the two masters. And again, one of them would have had to have been, you know, an investment in plan B. And it's your mindset is no, all or nothing. And I think it's really commendable how you let it take over your life, but it just highlights you. If you want that heightened top tier success, that's what it takes. You know, I'm a great believer in part-time effort, part-time results. You know, it is as simple as that. And you know, full-time effort, but then there's full-time, and there's nearly a new label now that I'm seeing from it, which is whole of time results. So that's a fantastic idea.
I think it just goes back to, though, that same thing that everyone's got the same 24 hours in the day. It's up to you to make of that what you want. No one has got more time. You can either have excuses or results, as they say. And even small amounts of time are interesting. So I just did a quick calculation there. So even if you spend 5 minutes a day on something every single day, that's over a day at the end of the year of effort in that particular field. So obviously with hours and hours, that's ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, just the little snippets can all add up.
Yeah, and it's all that consistency.
What is it, that one degree every day of improvement, and you know, 365.
And then you've got the compounding effect as well, and
the compounding effect as well.
Yeah. So if you could impart one mindset shift into our listeners, what would you think that could be?
Have a goal, have a realistic goal, and then I don't know, just don't let anything sort of take away from that. If you've got that goal and you know that that's going to improve your life, improve your feelings of self-esteem or whatever, don't let anything get in the way. Not necessarily at a cost to other people, but just have that attitude that it may take me longer, but I'm going to get there in the end.
Work on that methodology, define the goal, and then reverse. I like reverse engineering things. So where do I want to get to? Right. How am I going to get there? And I think, is it Michael will know this. Gary Keller, I think he says, have your big goals and have your little goals, because you'll overachieve on your big goals. You'll do them sooner than you thought. And the little goals, you'll let them slide. You focus on the big things, which is odd, really, because the smaller things are easier to do by definition.
I think it's like 3 years and 5 years. You'll underestimate what you can achieve in 3 years and overestimate what you can achieve in 5, or the reverse of that, some along those lines. So it's you'd be surprised what you can achieve in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Well, wow. There's loads to unpick here. I think it's been a fantastic episode.
Just
Thanks so much. Go for it.
Clarify on here. So, Dylan, who was your undercard?
Oh, yeah, the UFC World Champion we discussed, who's now over in Los Angeles, and Michael Bisping. He was a warm-up fight for my main event on one of my fights. That's my claim to fame now.
There we go. I need to do justice that yes,
But yeah, some incredible stuff unpicked and some really easily stuff that people can implement. And for me, it's just really, really reinforced that all in or not in. And don't. There's a clip from Matthew McConaughey that's don't half-arse it. If you're going all in, go all in, because you're just going to be shortchanging yourself otherwise.
Yeah. Hesitation is going to cost you in the long run if you're not careful.
Yeah. Especially in the fight game. Yeah.
Losing out of your life as you're on your back looking at Tweety Pie.
But yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dylan.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Highest Level with Michael Bailey and Anthony Dawson. If this episode inspired you, like, review, and share the podcast. Your support helps others level up too. Until next time, keep growing towards your highest level.